Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a special, rather rare Transformer. We're taking a look at the 1984 accidentally released Transformer, Bumblejumper. Bumblejumper would only be available in 1984, and he would be discontinued by 1985 as Hasbro started to realize the error of him being in the line. Bumblejumper was accidentally included as the figure on certain carded versions of Bumblebee and Cliffjumper. So in a lot of ways, that's how he got his name, as being a formation of two of their names, although the fandom more calls him Bumper, and he has been given an official showing in the IDW comic books. Now some of you might be wondering, how could Bumblejumper get mistaken on a Cliffjumper card? Well, if you've seen my videos on Bumblebee and Cliffjumper, you'll also know that they were released in red. Both toys were released in red and yellow. It's just that it's become more accepted that Bumblebee is the yellow one and Cliffjumper is the red one. So there is also a red version of Bumblejumper. Just at the moment, I don't have that one. Bring him up close to the camera now so you can really get a good, solid look at him, folks. And the easiest way to spot him is the fact that the face here does look more human-like than robot. I mean, you got the angled nose and a visible mouth, obviously. I mean, it's still robotic in looks, but that's how you can definitely tell it from Bumblebee. And the easiest way to tell it's not Cliffjumper or his later modified hubcap is the squarish nature of his body. Whereas Cliffjumper's is more curvy, the body here on Bumblejumper is rather squarish in nature. Taking a look at Bumblejumper's articulation, he had the same articulation as the other two toys, namely in the fact that you can rotate his arm at the shoulder all the way. And as for leg articulation, you can bend his ankles. Of course, something that some people might prize on a Bumblejumper is the condition of how static the arms are. As you can see, the right arm here is very, very loose. But by contradiction, the left arm on this sample is still pretty stiff. So, that is something that some fans might be looking for. So always keep that in mind, and definitely ask your questions when you're buying a loose Bumblejumper. As the main issue with many fans getting a Bumblejumper is price. Bumblejumper does tend to be on the expensive side, especially for a Transformer toy of his size, with many of the samples definitely going for well over $100 loose, sort of like this guy. Now, for one that's like that, I would want to know that both arms are in excellent condition and that the rubber tires are also in excellent condition. If they aren't, then you're being ripped off. Bumblejumper is sort of rare, but he's not super, super rare. So he doesn't really command the high prices that a lot of dealers want to charge for this toy. So definitely buyer beware, and definitely shop around if you're looking for Bumblejumper for your collection. Now, getting back onto the more important matters, How do we transform Bumblejumper? Well, since he's just like Bumblebee and Cliffjumper, it's exactly the same. Fold the head down into the body. Push the arms in at the sides. Fold down the feet and slide them into the body. And then there you go. This is his car mode. So you can definitely see the squarishness again, and the sharp angles for the passenger area. He is a Mazda Familia 1500 XG. It's a Mazda type car that was available from 1980 to 1984, so that makes him about accurate for a car available during that time period. How well does he roll on the table? Well, pretty darn good for a toy with rubber tires. Pretty good for a 30-some-odd-year-old toy that has rubber wheels. But of course, I'm sure some of you would like to see how does he compare to Bumblebee and Cliffjumper in car mode. Well, here's Bumblebee. You can notice that Bumblebee is considerably more curvy and has a higher hood than what Bumblejumper has. Now, as for comparing him to Cliffjumper, well, aside from the color difference, get Bumblebee out of the way here so we can put them at a different angle. Cliffjumper has a spoiler at the back. Bumblejumper does not, but you can also notice, take a look at the hood detail here. As you can see here on Bumblejumper, there is an indentation in the hood, right dead center. That's more or less the biggest giveaway on that being Bumblejumper, is this right here. This indentation. If you see this, this is definitely Bumblejumper, folks. So if you're going to look for one to be out on the market, this is what you got to look for. That's the easiest way to tell, especially if he's in car mode, and 9 times out of 10, if you're at a toy show or a flea market or whatever, he's going to be in this mode because this mode's the least likely to get damaged when being transported. So that's what you'd have to look for. That's about the easiest way I can point it out to you. Now, since Bumblejumper was not an officially released toy in the United States or in many of the other markets that the Transformers were available, he naturally does not have an official card back or a text back. So normally at this point, I would be giving you my final thoughts, and they wouldn't be kind to him because of the way this is. But, however, that's going to change. When I was at OhioCon the other week, I found something that changed that. This book right here. The Unofficial Guide to Vintage Transformers, 1980s through 1990s, by J.E. Alvarez. This book right here changed how this was going to be done. Mainly due to one thing on the inside. Give me a second here to pull it up. And that was this right here. The Estrella company that was doing the toys through Hasbro in Brazil made Bumblejumper an official toy to the line. As you can see, he was also released in white. So, if you happen to find a white one, if you can see that some of the trademarking is in Portuguese, chances are you have found the version for him. This is about the only official artwork known for Bumblejumper, or Bumper, however you want to call him. But this is about the only official art for him. And of course down here we have a close-up of his tech spec. Now while he doesn't have the grid that the others had, we have a bio for him. Unfortunately, there that you see, it is in Portuguese. Thankfully, I spent part of that weekend on Google Translate, and we have been able to roughly translate this into English. I've sort of adapted it to fit the Transformer universe that we're all more familiar with. So, here goes. Bumblejumper's function is listed as strategy, and his motto is, be in the right place at the right time. This is the key to victory. Bumblejumper is not fast, nor does he have extraordinary strength, but is unsurpassed in his speciality, strategic planning of the missions of all the Autobots. His ability to analyze and his logical reasoning are highly developed. He anticipates events and plans a devastating surprise attack to his enemies. Is cold-blooded and calculating. Ooh, that makes him sound like a rather scary-looking character, doesn't it, folks? But, wait a second. In the G1 line, we did have a strategist for the Autobots. In the form of Prowl. So, it leaves you to wonder, did Prowl get a release in Brazil, and did they change his function? And even if Bumblejumper here was released as an official toy here in the States, would he have kept the same function? I'd kind of like to think that he might have. Having somebody else to be an extra strategist would have definitely benefited the Autobots. Optimus Prime could certainly have needed all the help he could get on their short war here with the Decepticons on Earth, and being at the disadvantage of not having an easy way to get back to Cybertron to get supplies or reinforcements, any sort of tactical advantages Optimus could take, he would certainly need. Now we'll get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Bumblejumper? I will admit to you all at first, I was going to put Bumblejumper in the bottom tier and leave it at that, due to the fact that we had very little to go on as to what exactly he did or what good he was for the unit. As far as we knew, he was just some generic Autobot trooper, and that'd be the end of it. Granted, that did leave him open more for imagination purposes, and I'm always a big fan of going with imagination. But in light of finding this new information about his release in Brazil, I've had my mind changed about him. I'm moving him up into the middle tier, folks. I'd put him in the top tier, but I would have preferred having some numbers on the tech spec, especially when finding that he has a similar function to Prowl. I would have loved to have seen more to compare the two of them equally. Given by what little is on the bio, it shows that he does apparently have a highly developed senses so that he can plan surprise attacks. So he's probably more of a specialist in ambush tactics, whereas Prowl was specifically a military strategist and planned many more of the battle tactics. I could easily see the two of them working together to come up with devastating ways to try to counter any threats that the Decepticons had. The icing on the cake is that the Portuguese version of this tech spec lists Bumblejumper as being a cold-blooded character. That's a pretty bold move for a toy line like this, especially to make one of the good guys supposedly very cold-blooded. It leaves you to wonder just how much of the Transformer lore they were actually using down there in Brazil. But it does make for a very fascinating and interesting addition to the toy line. So, I'm definitely going to go with the middle tier on it. Partially due to the fact that since he's pretty much the same toy-wise as Bumblebee and Cliffjumper, that's a bit of a disappointment. But it is kind of interesting the fact that they were able to engineer so many little cars to transform in the same way, so we'll give the engineers some credit on it. But the biggest thing that I'm using to hold against him is how much the fandom and the dealers seem to want to rip off collectors on this toy. Bumblejumper is not worth a whole lot of money, no matter what, unless he's still sealed on a card backer that's in very excellent condition, then yeah, he is worth a lot of money. But as a loose toy, no, not by a long shot. He's not as rare as what most people would lead you to believe. So, I just think too many people are trying to rip the fans off for it, and it kind of hurts the evaluation of the toy in the long run. But still, in light of the new evidence from this book, I'm willing to give him a middle tier status, and I think he's a valuable addition to the Autobot army. And that concludes my review of the Generation 1 Autobot Bumblejumper. If you like this review, please leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Also, don't forget, hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. Please also consider leaving a like and share your thoughts about Bumblejumper in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying catch you all later.